you would be better off getting a real world job for $32 an hour than you would be working for yourself. Now, the next bit I'm going to say might be a little bit offensive. That is a really immature way to look at business. As soon as they hire somebody, they get a reality check on how much value they're actually delivering through their time. The problem is something I call the problem with linear priced models. 50 clients underpriced $10 per cut. You do that 20 times a year, and you are losing $10,000 to something that seems like a small margin. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. I'm going to show you today the 4 hidden money issues that are super common in the lawn and garden industry. This is especially relevant for solo operators and very pertinent if you're hiring employees or about to hire employees. These are some of the things that are make or break, and a lot of us, including me, didn't even notice that there were issues until they started really hurting the business. I'm going to run you through these 4 different factors, 4 different elements of business. And I just want to say from the get-go, these are things that you can understand. You might think the math side is difficult to understand. It can be sometimes, but I'm just like you. I'm a lawn contractor. I've been doing this for 12 years, and these are lessons I've learned from my experience, and I'm going to go in detail in a way that you can understand to help you get out of these problems, to solve the problems. I'm going to show you how we solve the problems, and at the end of this, you're going to have a really good framework for how to make your business much more healthy. Without further ado, the first problem is this. All right, let's get into it. Here is problem number 1. Problem number 1 is this. So many people in business look at their business like this. They're a solo operator. They're bringing in this example, $2,000 a week. That's the green section. And they go, well, $2,000 a week is coming into my account. $400 a week is going out of my account in the form of tools, equipment, maintenance, fuel, you name it, right? Insurance, those things. And you go, well, there's a $1,600 difference. So this difference here that I'm pointing to with the cursor, that's my profit margin. I'm making $1,600 profit. If you think like that, you're not thinking about it the right way. It's far too simplistic. If we think like this, set ourselves up for problems. And I'm saying we because I did this back in the day. And it's one of the most simplistic ways to think. It's overly simplistic. It's holding you back. Let me show you why. The way you should be thinking about money in your business is like a full-on small business owner, full-on calculating everything that comes in and out of the business, including the value of your time, whether or not it's on the tools or not. And this is one of the things that holds people back in business, because as soon as they hire somebody, they get a reality check on how much value they're actually delivering through their time to the business. And that value is often not met by the sales that they're bringing in through the work they're doing. Let me show you in a concrete manner. I've got on here, and you can download this spreadsheet. You can work it out for yourself. You need to answer 3 time-related questions and 2 money-related questions, and this spreadsheet will pump out a rough idea of where your business is at, just as quick as that. The first question is, how much time a week do you spend on the tools? These are all weekly questions. I've put down $35 an hour. So 35 hours a week, sorry. Time on the tools a week is 35 hours. How much travel time do you put in? I've put down 5 hours. This equals 40 hours on the tools. This is driving around, doing jobs. I've included equipment maintenance, quoting, things like that in there. You can modify this however you like when you download the spreadsheet. The next question you want to ask is, if you were to replace yourself in that role, what would be the amount of money that you would have to pay to have someone replace you? You want to think about this holistically, including superannuation, workers' comp, and you want to charge this out as a casual rate, because it's a little bit easier to calculate that way compared to a full-time rate. We've got to take holidays and stuff. So if I was to pay someone a casual rate and I was to have them go and do the mowing, the quoting, the travel time, a little bit of equipment maintenance, a little bit of gardening, what would I have to pay them? Now, you can answer this for yourself, but I'm going to put a nice round number of $50 an hour, which would be about 45-ish, with super workers' comp and stuff like that, maybe a little bit less, but I'm going to put in $50 an hour. immediately, do you see what just happened to that graph? Let me go back. $0, $50 an hour. The wages that it would take me doing 40 hours a week on the tools at $50 an hour is $2,000. That's my entire sales. That's all of my sales. That's my entire income for the week. I am now operating on this spreadsheet at a loss because my income is not enough to afford my business expenses and my replacement wages for on the tools. But it's going to get worse because I still am doing 10 hours a week, which is the next question. How many hours a week are you doing on admin? I'm doing 10 hours a week on admin. Same question again. How much would you have to pay somebody to replace yourself in an administrative role? If you say, let's just make up a number, I'm going to put out $40 an hour. Again, it's a casual rate. These numbers don't have to be right or wrong. This is just to show the concept. You can modify these yourself in the spreadsheet. I'm now even worse off than I was before. If I have a look at this, I've got somebody who is earning $2,000 a week and they're paying $400 in concrete money out the door. But the value of the time that they're putting into their business is a further $2,400 on top of that. And they are only paying themselves $1,600. They are operating at a negative profit of $800. I hope that makes sense to you. This is a big problem. And you might go, well, in the short term, I'm still $1,600 up. And I'd say, yes, while you're growing a business, fair enough. But the problem is you would be better off going, I put the math here, and getting a real world job for $32 an hour than you would be working for yourself in this scenario. Now, this will calculate it for you. And I just want to say you're much better because that real world $32 an hour does not include superannuation and workers' compensation that you would get paid as an employee. So if you were going to McDonald's and got paid $32 an hour, you would get super and workers' comp on top of that. You'd be better off doing that for the 50 hours a week that you're working in your business than working in your business as it currently stands. What you need to do is you need to have a total sales that covers all of these expenses in here. So I'm going to increase that to $3,000. And now we're at a happy place in this fictitious example here that I've made up. This is a concept that holds so many people back. They think too simplistically. They don't value their non-billable times. And so they may be making $70 an hour whilst on site, $90 an hour whilst on site, $100 an hour whilst on site. But all the other aspects of business are all bits of time that should be considered when you're thinking about running your business. You need to think holistically about these things. Otherwise, what happens is after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, there comes a point where you realize you've been slaving away, working your backside off, sweating in crazy weather, dealing with insane clients, people who don't pay, chasing your tail for invoices, having all these struggles, and you realize you have nothing financially to show for it, even though at the beginning there was a $1,600 gap between those two numbers. You thought you were good, but you're not good because the amount of money that's actually being brought in when you consider holistically the time you spend is not enough. Now, the thing is, the ripple effect of this is even worse because when you start running low on money, you start overworking to make up that deficit. When you overwork, you fall behind on equipment maintenance. Equipment fails. And when it fails, you don't have the money set aside to cover those costs. These things snowball. You start running behind on admin because you can't handle the workload. You're now doing 50 hours on the tools instead of 40. You still have 10, 12 hours of admin. You're running behind. Business gets terrible. And after a while, you go, stuff it. I don't like this. And you throw in the towel. And the whole time you're clueless because you didn't realize that difference that you thought was profit is not actually profit. It's a difference. Profit needs to be accounted for when you're fully and truly valuing the actual time you put into your business. Now, the next bit I'm going to say might be a little bit offensive. If it is, I'm sorry, I don't know how else to put this, but there are some people who would respond to this and they'd say, I don't feel comfortable charging money to cover my non-billables like travel and quoting and administrative tasks. That just doesn't feel right to me because I'm a gardener or I'm a lawn contractor. I get paid to do the gardening, the lawn contracting, not the administrative side. If you say something like that, I don't want to be real disrespectful, but I am going to be honest. That is a really immature way to look at business. If I go to McDonald's, is the value that I'm getting from McDonald's just the burger and fries that I get? Or is it also the convenience of having the ability to drive through and get it in a minute or two on a good day? It's the convenience. People don't necessarily go to McDonald's for the food. They go for the convenience. You are the same. There is so much value to a business that does a great gardening job, great mowing job, and is amazing on admin. If you are just good at gardening and you're terrible at admin, you're not very good to deal with. A lot of people don't like working with those kinds of businesses. If you're great on both, why wouldn't you charge in a way that accounts for both? It doesn't make sense to me, somebody who doesn't feel comfortable charging for something that is an integral part of this industry. People are literally hiring us to help them free up their free time. And being great at administration does that also. You need to think about business in this way, the holistic value you're giving, just like with McDonald's. It's not the burger, it's not the fries, although it's a part of it. It's the whole package, including the convenience. So that's the first problem. Thinking too narrowly about how you charge and the value that you give leads to unprepared, overly simplified pricing structures that ultimately lead to burnout and somebody quitting in the business. If you don't have that foundational part right, it doesn't really matter what else flows. Getting great clients, having great equipment, working with great people, there's a fundamental issue going wrong in the business. All right, so now let's talk about problem number 2. Problem number 2 is one of the most insidious problems in small business, and it's something I've never talked about before on the podcast because the solution used to be incredibly complicated mathematics. We do have a much simpler solution I'm going to show you at the end. But the problem is something I call the problem with linear priced models. And a lot of you are there right now, and I was there too. You do that math we did in problem number 1, you work it out and you go, I need to charge $100 or let's say $120 an hour to have a successful business. You go, no worries, my problems are solved. I was undercharging. I need to go charge more. We're sorted. Fantastic. Hold your horses, because there is a problem and it's insidious, it's hidden, it's very difficult to find. And in fact, I only found it after I started hiring staff and sending them out to jobs. And I was like, why am I not making the money I should be making? I've done the math. I've done it right. Everything should be adding up, and it wasn't adding up. Here's why. The problem is linear pricing. Let me tell you. So let's say we've got this $120 an hour as your target in business. What that means is you should be charging $2 per minute on site. Is that true? Now you might go, yeah, that math adds up. No, let's look at it specifically. If you were to go to a site and the job was literally a 5-minute job, at that rate, if you were doing just straight linear pricing, you should charge the client $10, right? You charge $120 an hour, $2 a minute. You're going to be there for 5 minutes. You should just charge them $10. Every single contractor, hearing me say this, is screaming at their headset right now going, no, that's dumb. You shouldn't do that. You need to have a minimum price. This is the start of discovering that linear pricing models are not actually the best way to run a business. In fact, they're a really bad way to run a business. Here's why. Shorter jobs have much higher expenses per minute than longer jobs. And we know this. It's something called economies of scale. Somebody who makes 10,000 of an item can make it much cheaper per item than somebody who makes 3 of that exact same item. The travel time, the administrative costs, the setup and pack up are often the same on a 5-minute job as they are on a 10-hour-long job. Maybe there's some slight differences, but simply charging a flat rate per minute is not going to be a holistic approach and a truly accurate approach to the actual expenses that you're getting in business. So let me show this on the screen, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking the solution is easy. Look, you just have a minimum price. Why are you even talking about this? It's not the solution. I just got to tell you, it's not the solution. I'm going to show you why. Here we have on the screen. Let me show you. You've got down here, we've got time on site on the bottom here. And that time on site is sort of low here. This is a couple of minutes. And all this up over here that's like a full day of work, all right? And we got the cost per minute. And our linear pricing stays the same whether the job is a 2-minute job down here or if it's a 10-hour job down here. You get the idea. Now we might say, like I said, you might go, oh, look, minimum price. That solves the answer. So let's go take this. What we do is we take our minimum price, we put it in there, and that now, let me make that a nice green color, that covers us. Well, our pricing is such that up here, when the small jobs, right, we're making a much higher hourly rate per minute, much more high cost per minute, and the longer the job goes, well, we go back to our linear pricing model and go, well, this is better. And you go, yeah, well, it is better. Don't get me wrong, it's better. But there's a massive problem. Now, here's the reality about your expenses. Now, I can't go into the detailed math right now, but I do want to show you the concept. The concept is that, as you know, the shorter the job, the higher the cost per minute. The longer the job, the lower the cost per minute. What you find is that your expenses are kind of actually something like this. They start really high per minute and they go to being really low per minute. And what you'll find is if you have a average hourly rate, it's going to be over those expenses at the end and it'll be under those expenses at the minute. So if you have a linear pricing model, all your longer jobs, you're going to be making money on. All your shorter jobs, you're not going to be making money on. The problem is the drop-off is a lot more gradual than what the minimum price accounts for. So your minimum price is accounting you for here. Your pricing is above the curve there, no problems. But in the middle of the curve, we have a problem here. There's a whole bunch of jobs that aren't actually being priced correctly when you use a minimum price and then a linear pricing model. And the problem is that if you go back to our time, we've got a few minutes down here and we've got about 10 hours over here. Now, this is just a graph for visual representation, but what you're going to find is businesses are usually not making money in the 1 to 4 hour range, somewhere around there. Maybe half an hour to 2 hours on the business, maybe 2 hours to 5 hours. It's really hard to tell. But in that range is where a lot of businesses are actually not making a lot of profit. Now, they're making huge profits off their minimum price and they're making great profits off their longer jobs. And it may come out in the wash. But if you start doing a lot of these jobs, you're going to start noticing some problems. And when I started to notice this, was actually that I was doing my math and I should have been getting about a 10% profit margin. And I was looking at my employees, they were hitting their target times, they were doing the jobs fine, but I was getting about 2%, maybe 3%, maybe I was losing money some week. And that was because so much of this, or sorry, I should say so much of my work was in this range. So the simple solution, which is actually quite complicated, but we've just now made it simple, is to simply price on a curve like that as well and make your pricing like that. And you go, as any sane person would, how the hell do I do that? That curve seems like really complicated maths. It is. I've done it for you. Let me show you. So this is the exact pricing model, this curved pricing that you see here that we use in the MoQuote app. So if I click Quote Engine and I click on gardening, I've set it up so I've got my hourly rate at $100 per hour. If I simply put in 1 hour of work, what you'll notice is my actual cost is $138 excluding GST. So what I should do then, well, I'm really charging way more than $100 now. What I should do, what I would expect, is that if I make this 10 hours, it would be $1,380 at a 10x ratio. So if I just do this and I scroll down to 10 hours, no, we're not. Our pricing has gone down. And now these numbers will be different because these numbers are accurately representing your figures that you put in. Every single business puts in different figures on travel time and the target hourly rates and setup and backup time, everything. So this is accurate to the settings that I've put in here. But you can see that this is curving on a graph. It's curved, so it's pricing on a curve, not pricing a linear model. And so if I go down all the way down to say 0 minutes and so 0 hours and let's just go back to 10 minutes, right? My job is $40. It's way higher per hourly rate. Again, it's following this kind of curve here that we should be seeing in our businesses. a holistic representation of how your business expenses are covered in the pricing. So one of the responses that you might get to that is people go, well, I don't need your fancy app. You're making this complicated. I don't need to spend the whole exorbitant money of $25 a month to help me solve this mathematical issue out. I can just simply extend my minimum price out. So I'll make my minimum price much more expensive. Well, the problem is that you're now, if you do that, overcharging for all these jobs. And if your competitor is using the Moquo app, they're pricing on a curve, they're going to be cheaper than you, but still insanely profitable, which is the Goldilocks zone to being in business, to be competitive on price and insanely profitable. And so you might go, well, maybe I'll extend my minimum price out just a little bit, and then I'll raise my hourly rate so I'm covering myself like that. Well, the same problem happens over here. You're now no longer competitive on the biggest jobs. Your hourly rate's way too high on the biggest jobs. And this is one of the things that people have really struggled with when they hear some of the stuff that I talk about with hourly rate, is they go, I would never be able to charge that much in my region for the work that I do. And you go, well, maybe the problem is that you're actually taking this and you're putting it up here. Maybe you can actually charge lower hourly rates for longer jobs and be competitive on those longer jobs and still be profitable, as long as you're pricing on a curve, because it's a holistic, intelligent way to think about your pricing. Every single job that is quoted in the Moquo app uses this curved pricing model. It takes into account your data, whether it's the lawn mowing pricing, any future job that's coming up, gardening, hedging, ride-on mowing. A lot of those services may not be out on the app now. They are coming soon. But every single job, you put in your data points, you put in your targets, you put in all that information, and it just does the math for you. And that allows you to be competitive on the bigger jobs and still be making a lot of money on the smaller jobs. It's a win-win for your business. And I just want to add to this as well. The Moquo pricing that it gives at the bottom, that's not the price you have to quote. You can up that. So if you've got certain jobs, or you've got a client and you go, they can afford this. The app's telling me $120 is what I need to charge. Well, that $120 on our graph might be somewhere around here, right? But if you know the client can actually afford up here, just quote up there. If you look at that, they can afford 200, quote 200. The app is guaranteeing that if your data input is right, that it is going to quote that curve that you need. You can quote above that if you think you can win the job. It just ensures that every single job you do is going to be profitable because you've got that math worked out for you. So the next problem number 3, is the most common objection that I get to everything I'm saying. People will look at this and they go, look, you're being far too complicated. You're overcomplicating things. The really cynical people might even say, you're making an issue so you can sell your app. Let me answer that question, because I used to believe that. What I'm calling this is, I call this the stability trap. It's this attitude where as long as I'm making enough money per week, it doesn't really matter if my pricing is a little bit off on some jobs, a little bit up on the others. As long as I make it per week, I'm fine. And you kind of are. And that's why I fell for this trap too. Let me tell you a story. Before I discovered this sort of pricing, I had an issue. I had an amazing job. I had a great contract. It was a $60,000 a year contract. It was 1 day a week I was spending there. This is 7 years ago, something like that. So that's $1,200 a day for one person. I was making great bank there, and the place looked fantastic. They had this business had about 30 sites across the country, aged care facilities, retirement villages, and they said, their words, ours looked the best. So I was doing fantastic work there. And again, this is their words. We're doing fantastic work. We're making great money. Everyone's happy. I've been there for 3 years. Then something happened. The head of the business, who looked over all the 30 sites, they had about 25 contractors or so doing the 30 sites. Administratively, it was a nightmare. I understand it. They decided that they're going to break all their sites into 4 regions. And now this is millions and millions and millions of dollars a year now in work. Simply put, I wasn't big enough to compete. I put a bid in for a region. I couldn't compete. I wasn't big enough. I didn't have the staff. I lost the site. I realized this problem. have a look on the screen. Here is a scattered pricing model. On the left-hand side, we have price. So the higher up the job, the more price you're getting for time on site, which is the bottom. So this job down here, not a whole lot of time, not a whole lot of time on site, not a whole lot of money. This job up here, a hell of a lot of time on site and a lot of money. This job up here is your cash cow. These jobs here are your best jobs. These jobs here, well, the ones at the bottom are your worst jobs. But these are your lowest income earners. This is the $30 job down the road you're doing for the pensioner that you know you're not making money for. This is that $60,000 a year site I'm talking about. Here's the problem. When you have scattered pricing like this, which is what I used to have, where certain jobs I've been making money on, certain jobs I'm not, I was clearing enough in a week. I was doing fine each week. What happens when you lose this job though? What happens when you lose these two jobs? You realize that the balance is actually off. You are only 1 or 2 jobs away from losing the majority of your profit when you have a scattered pricing system like this. The next thing that you realize is when you have scattered uneven pricing, every single job below this line, by definition, is not profitable. What that means is the shortfall in the expenses that you're losing on these, if you're still profitable, is being paid by these guys. That's not fair. But the third thing is, if you have all these jobs in this profit margin, right at the top there, why would you settle to spend half your time doing jobs down here? Now, if you say it's too complicated to charge like that, well, it's not now because we made an app that makes it really simple. But what would happen to your business if you were to reprice all your jobs with the pricing curve and take all these jobs up here? Now, you might lose a couple, but you're not making money off them anyway. And here's the thing, you can be charging a linear price model. I just want to reiterate this. You could be charging a linear price model at $120 an hour and still not be making money from certain clients. Like we showed before, the example on my phone when I showed you the app was that 1 hour worth of work in that example, even though we were charging out at $100 an hour, should have been $138 an hour plus GST. These are the kind of issues that are really hard to find until you start hiring people. Here's a question I want you to ask. Ask yourself this. Ask your friends in the industry. Why do so many people struggle really hard to find employees in this industry? 1, it's a tough industry to find, but 2, they actually often find employees if you know what the story is, and the employees don't succeed. And usually the case is that the business owner is not making money from those employees. And so they have to go out on this tool still. They still have to go out and do the work. And what they realize is they don't have the time to train, to support, to quality control, and things start falling apart. That's my story. I'm not judging anybody else, but this is just something that we've worked through. And now we're at a stage where we've had multiple guys out today doing work at multiple jobs. I've got some amazing before and afters of these jobs. These days, essentially 99.9% of all work is done by my team, not me. If anybody knows my story, I've got a health issue. I haven't worked full-time in the industry for 5 years. That is on the tools. We were forced to solve these issues, which is what we did with MoQuo. The story of MoQuo is that these were the exact mathematical solutions that I made in-house. We made this app in-house. We didn't tell anybody about it for years, and it solved so many of our problems because pricing on a curve meant that every single job we did was above that profit margin that we needed, and it took us from really, really struggling to actually getting somewhere with our pricing. The scattered pricing approach leaves you, when you have your jobs spread out like this, the scattered pricing approach leaves you vulnerable to losing a couple of key clients, and when you've lost those clients, your business is barely profitable. And if you don't have a good system of quoting, how do you not know that you're going to replace those clients that were good and profitable with undercharged jobs? because pricing on a curve is the answer. And if you don't have a system to price on a curve, linear pricing, a couple of small jobs, that's why people struggle. This is also one of the reasons why, if you have a look at a lot of contractors out there, there are a lot of contractors absolutely killing it with large commercial contractors, and there's a lot of contractors absolutely killing it with tiny, tiny residential houses. All those houses that fit under the minimum price, they do 10 of those in a street, they smash them out, they're doing fantastic. Big contractors, guys doing fantastic. Why is everybody in the middle, not everybody, but so many people in the middle struggling to grow? Now you know the answer. Pricing on a curve. Linear pricing doesn't cover that middle ground. Now I've got one more problem for you. And you might go, Luke, I don't have any mental energy for any more problems. I'm sorry. I've just got a lot of bad news for you. It's even worse than some of these other issues we've been talking about. It is another silent killer. And that is the problem of time estimation. Can you accurately predict how much time you're going to spend on site? Because here's the reality. Here's the truth of running a business. There is no difference between underpricing a job 10% and underestimating the time on site by 10%. A job, let me put it a different way. A job that should be $100 cost and you charge it at $90 is just as damaging as a job that should take 1 hour but takes you 1 hour and 6 minutes. They're both 10% off. Now, they're 10% off in different directions, but so many people are focused on the money side and they don't nail the time on site. Now, if you're a solo operator and your day goes from being a 7.5 hour day to an 8 hour day, is that the end of the world? Not really. If you start employing staff, yes, it is. It genuinely is, because you are only playing with small margins. If a day should take 7 hours, and it takes 7 hours and 42 minutes instead, then your entire profit margin has been eaten up by the jobs taking too long, if your profit margin is 10%. That's the difference between success and failure in a small business. If you have set your business up to have 10% profit margins and a 7-hour day turns into 7 hours and 42 minutes, you're breaking even. And so here are the 4 problems. Let's stack them up together. 1, you need to know your hourly rate and have a holistic approach. 2, you can't have linear pricing. You need to have a curve so every single job is profitable. 3, your pricing needs to be all above that curve. You can't have scattered pricing even if you are making enough money over the week, because you're vulnerable to things going wrong. But even if you nail all those things and you predict the time on site wrong, you're going to have even more problems. And this is another bad contention for business. If you are struggling to accurately predict how long these jobs should take on site, you're going to have a lot of problems. This is one of the biggest problems that we solve with the MoQuote app. It's literally why I made it. It's literally why I released it. We timed over 10,000 jobs because we were having this problem in our business. We started off sending guys out to quote because I couldn't go. I was too unwell. We'd send guys out to quote and they'd be off by 10, 20%. And I couldn't get upset at them because they didn't have the years of experience that I had quoting. Now, we made some basic systems and we started out in a pretty basic way and it got a little bit more accurate, but we still weren't solving those problems. It was only until we could accurately predict within a few minutes how long a job should take that we actually started getting somewhere. And this is the holistic approach to quoting that you need to have. And these are the 4 money issues that are causing you problems. I think you can see it now. I hope you can see it now. This is why we made the app. A lot of people are thinking like this is an app for new business out there. It certainly is. But there are a lot of business out there that are not as far as they thought they would be 3 years in business. And they think, well, I'm charging $120 an hour. I should be fine. And now you're starting to realize, oh, there's more to this game. There is a reason, in my opinion, that so many businesses struggle to grow in this industry. That so many businesses struggle to do what we've done, where you have unsupervised employees over a long period of time, and many, many different employees have success out in the field, make profit, have great turnaround in terms of results on the jobs, client satisfaction. So much of that starts with the money. It's not the full picture. There's a lot more to do. But the money is a big problem because they don't have consistent, solid pricing. They don't have consistent, solid ways to predict the time on site. You think the guys are going to be out there for 6 hours, they're out there for 9. You think the guys are going to be out there for 9 hours, they're out there for 7. You could have fit in 2 more hours of work. There's all these problems. It's really hard to manage. But the same thing goes for you in your business. Just because you're making enough money week by week and maybe you're getting by, are you putting away super? Do you have holidays? Do you have savings saved up? Have you been in this industry for years and years and years and you don't really have that much savings to show for it? You might be enjoying the work. You might feel like you're charging enough, but maybe there's a lot more to it than that. Undervaluing your time, you lose profit. Overvaluing your time, if a 1 hour job you think is going to take you an hour and a half, you overvalue it, you're charging 50% more, you lose the job. There's a fine line in some of these things. And this is out for years and years. People have been asking, how do you charge so much per hour? These are the strategies we use. We're accurate, where we know what time we're going to be on site. We know what the curve needs to be. Big jobs, we're accurate on price. Small jobs, we're accurate on price. And we're competitive to a certain degree against guys with simpler, more rudimentary pricing models. One of the responses we get to the app is people say, well, I quoted, and maybe my job was a $50 job and the app came in at $55. And I feel like, well, that's pretty good. You know, like, I mean, my pricing was not too bad. We don't think a lot of people's pricing is bad. If your pricing was bad, you wouldn't be in business. But what we think is that a lot of that profit margin is that $5, that is that extra 10%. If you quote a job at 100 and the app says it should be 107, you're missing out on 7%, not in terms of, what you could have had, but I want to know what you should have. That is money that you do actually need. It's money that you should be putting away. You should have savings in your business. You should have backup. You shouldn't be running behind with the ATO. And let me just, I'm with you on all these things. I've made all those mistakes and more, which is why I made these pricing systems. I don't try and come across this as like I'm some genius financial wizard. I'm the sort of guy, I run into the fire, get burnt, and then go, maybe we should get a hose first, right? Like, that's my story. I'm the guy who runs down to traffic, just dodges a couple of cars and goes, maybe I should look both ways next time. And hopefully I'm the person who's doing that before you guys are. And, the lovely people in this industry who I'm wanting to support so much can learn from our mistakes and maybe get ahead quicker than I did. These small margins in business are hurting you so much more than what you think. If you have one single job that you have underpriced by $10 a cut, and you're doing that cut 20 times a year, that $10 seems like nothing. It's $200 at the end of the year. If 50 of your clients are underpriced by that much, it's $10,000 a year. Let me repeat that. 50 clients underpriced $10 per cut. You do that 20 times a year, and you are losing $10,000 to something that seems like a small margin. That is what business is about. These small margins in pricing, these small margins in time estimation, don't take them for granted. If you found this helpful, I've got a link to MoQuote in the description. We have so much coming out, Right on Work, a whole bunch of measuring stuff coming up very soon. One step at a time. If you've been curious and you're waiting for us to get stuff out, you're free to do whatever you want, but I want to really appreciate and thank the people who are buying the app with the promise of the things to come, because I know it's hard to do that. You want it right now. I wish we could get it right now, but there's some people out there who are supporting the app. They're going and buying it whilst they're waiting for some of these features to come, because it just takes us time. But the more people who do that, the easier it is. Genuinely speaking, the more resources we can put towards it. And we're really thankful for everyone who supported. There's a link in the description, a free download of the spreadsheet that I did at the beginning in the description as well. Thank you so much for supporting. I'll see you in the next podcast.